We are recording on Tuesday, June 17th, 2025 at 2:04 p.m. Eastern Time with Dr. Ted Postol, who's been on here several times before, and I always use it as a good like canary or something. I've done so many guests and I have so many people watch this show that I always get requests to have people back on or to get someone on. Whenever I get like multiple pings from completely disparate social circles, I kind of view it as like buoys out in the ocean. Like I know a tsunami is coming, so when multiple people in the last 48 hours are like, you got to get Dr. Postal on. I was like, all right, well, there's the ping, and so naturally, I emailed you, I harassed you, I called you, and all of the above. And because you have the patience of a saint, you accepted, and you're doing it on short notice, which I am intensely grateful for. Um, but I have no expertise in this. You do. And so I'm going to hand it over to you, Dr. Postal, and you enlighten me and my listeners on everything you know about what has been unfolding in the Middle East over the last, I don't know, week.
Well, thank you very much,
Yes,
Tom.
sir.
Uh, I've been called a lot of things. Uh, Canary is not one of them.
Well, hey,
So
there's a new
it's
one.
no problem. But anyway, the uh, what I guess what we're talking about today is the developing war between Israel and Iran, and uh, there are several, of course, ways of analyzing this and thinking about it. It's important, I think, the most important is, in some sense, not the technical, although, of course, I'll that's where my special expertise is, and so I'll focus on that. But it's important for your audience to also be aware of the political background behind this. And I think uh, the circumstances of the initial attack on Iran from Israel uh, strongly indicate that this was well thought out, well planned in advance, and was directly intended to stop an ongoing negotiation between the United States and Iran with regard to their nuclear uranium enrichment program. And as some of your audience may be aware, Iran has been enriching uranium, and this has been a great concern because uranium can be used to build atomic weapons. I say atomic because they're different than thermonuclear weapons, but more than enough
Hmm.
to do the kind of damage that would be unacceptable and could, in fact, lead to action-reaction cycles that could lead to a general escalation in the appropriate circumstances that could engage the entire world in a nuclear conflagration. So this is not a minor thing. It's important to note that in terms of international law, Iran does have the right to enrich uranium because the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which Iran is a signatory of, specifically says that you can engage in enrichment of uranium if as long as you submit to very stringent safeguards and oversight from the International Atomic Energy Agency. And so far, Iran has allowed these inspections, but Iran has deviated from the general principles laid out because it has been experimenting, and in fact, more than experimenting, it has been accumulating a significant amount of uranium that's enriched beyond what is needed to run a nuclear energy program. And in particular, uh, uranium has is a mix of isotopes, uranium isotopes. uranium-235 and U-238. And the U-235 is the material, is the isotope that allows you to run a nuclear reactor, and the it's only available in naturally occurring uranium. It's about 0.7% of the uranium. The rest of the uranium is uranium-238. And depending on the design of the reactor, you might actually run with natural uranium. These are certain reactors actually can run with natural uranium, but most reactors require some level of what's called enrichment. You have a higher percentage of uranium-235 relative to uranium-238, and the use of enrichment technology currently it's typically done with devices called centrifuges, um, allows you to enrich uranium to the point where you can use it as a fuel in a nuclear reactor. And this is what uh, the Iranians have been doing in accord with the international legal system. But if you enrich uranium above a certain level, then you are not necessarily you're non-compliant with the intent of this arrangement, because you only need enriched uranium beyond the 3%, or in some cases what's called 20%, which I'll explain very quickly later. Um, if you're running nuclear reactors, certain kinds of research reactors, which produce medical isotopes, require higher enrichment. And the Iranians do have a medical reactor, an experimental reactor, and they are producing 20% enriched uranium for that, which raises questions about, you know, ultimate intent. And so the Iranians have stated that they do not want to have atomic weapons. We know that they had a program in the early 2000s to build atomic weapons, but they actually quite wisely concluded that building an atomic weapon would reduce their overall security rather than enhance it. And the reasons for that are easily understood. There are states like Saudi Arabia and Egypt which are potentially capable of building nuclear weapons themselves, which have not always been politically aligned with Iran, and it would likely induce them both to produce nuclear weapons so that they would not be subject to potential asymmetries if Iran got into some kind of confrontation with either Saudi Arabia or Egypt. And so they have wisely chosen, and of course, the Israelis are very concerned about these nuclear weapons. And the Israelis probably have somewhere around 200 nuclear weapons. That's the going guess. I haven't analyzed that particular question, so I'm using you know you know public analyses from other analysts. But 100 to 200, a few is enough to cause pause, even one. But
Yeah.
if you're facing a state with a couple of hundred nuclear weapons, or even a few tens of nuclear weapons, and you have only a few, you're really in a potentially dangerous situation, because it's very unlikely a state in that situation is going to confine itself to using one nuclear weapon, especially against a big state like Iran, which has a lot of important and valuable assets throughout this country. So uh, uh, choosing not to develop weapons is a very rational and sensible position to have. The United States has been and Israel, as it turns out, has been demanding that Iran eliminate all of its nuclear enrichment capability, and the Iranians are absolutely opposed to this um, demand, and there are multiple reasons for it. Not only, of course, they have the legal right to engage in this activity, but if you look at the history of nuclear technology, the development of nuclear technology in Iran, you would learn very quickly that this is an activity that is quite central to uh, Iranian cultural pride in terms of their demonstrating that they are capable of handling advanced technologies. Now, of course, anybody who looks at modern Iran understands they can handle a lot more advanced technologies than just nuclear enrichment, but it is a big part of the cultural pride in Iran, and that plays a further complicating factor. So, what the United States and Iran were just about going to do, the attack occurred on June 13, the Israeli attack. On June 14, the United States was going to start its first meetings with Iran to talk about ways that there might be an accommodation where all parties concerned could find a way to be relaxed with the situation. The Russians, Vladimir Putin, offered to help. The Russians have a close relationship with the Iranians, provide them with large amounts of technical support and weapons and cultural exchanges, and they've had a long program of this kind with Iran. And Putin offered to Trump that he would try to help. The Russians definitely. I would say the Russians do not want Iran to be a nuclear weapon state just as much or possibly more than the United States wants Iran to be a nuclear weapon state. So it's not that the Russians want to see Iran a nuclear weapon state. They are just trying to negotiate an arrangement where Iran does not become a nuclear weapon state, but still is allowed to enrich uranium within the confines of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So now I think it is reasonable to surmise. In fact, I will say I believe this, but we could leave this for a point of judgment that the attack on Iran occurred literally the day before this negotiation sessions were to begin. And many people, myself included, believe that this was a conscious choice by Netanyahu and his government to sabotage any kind of agreement, since the Israelis want Iran to be a state that has no nuclear capability ever at any level. And so they took it on themselves to sabotage these talks. And I think that's a very unfortunate development. I should say that the G7 just had a meeting where they issued a condemnation of the beginning of this war, but amazingly, they blamed Iran for the war, while Iran was involved in cooperatively moving toward a diplomatic negotiation when Israel pulled the rug out from everything and attacked Iran. So, and this is an underlying issue is uh, is going to play a role in both the Iranian and Russian attitudes toward dealing with this crisis. It's hard to know which way it will go, but the military side of it is now developing, and it's not quite as clean as some of the people in Israel seem to have thought it would be. The Israeli attack on Iran included uh, uh, the determined attempt to kill leading political figures in Iran. In fact, one of the leading political figures they killed was the negotiator for this agreement. And so they it's generally accepted that their objective is to cause the collapse of the regime, the political collapse of the regime, which is certainly under a lot of domestic pressure because there are lots of Iranians who are not happy with this conservative Islamic government, since Iran is a very modern state, and I think many Iranians are Islamic, but they are more interested in a more moderate kind of Islam than the state actually wants them to practice. So there is a lot of um, sort of opposition, domestic opposition to the government. But history has shown when you attack a country, essentially all the time that I'm aware of, there may be exceptions, but certainly in modern times, what you basically do is cause people to pull together.
Hmm.
They drop their differences. They say we are commonly under attack, and we're not going to put up with this. We're going to do what we need to defend our country. And my guess is that is the outcome that we're going to see in Iran, and it looks like it's moving in that direction.
Just
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
just a maybe comical observation. Any other budding nuclear power in the world, to me, this would convince me that I do need nuclear weapons. If I see my neighbor getting no-knocked by the cops, you're probably going to turn me into I own a gun, but let's say I didn't. You're probably going to get me thinking like maybe I should own a gun because it
Well, I think this is an issue. It's a
you
grave
get
concern to many people that no government is a simple unitarian
sure.
entity. It's made up of many different people with many different views. And of course, the Iranian government is no different from any other government. And we know there are lots of people, not lots, but many people who believe that Iran would be better off with nuclear weapons capability. And it's going to certainly give those people an opportunity to make their case and to apply pressure to the grand leader. So uh, that's a real concern, and we don't know how that will play out. But for now, Iran has not changed its position, uh, and hopefully it won't, but we'll see. But they are certainly intent on punishing Israel for this attack, and they are responding by launching large numbers of cruise missiles, which fly like airplanes, and ballistic missiles, which basically follow trajectories like a rock that is thrown. So they you launch them to a high speed, about 3 kilometers per second, and they'll travel about 1,000, 1,200 kilometers before they re-enter the atmosphere and deliver a warhead. And now the drones are like airplanes, and they are relatively easy to shoot down because they don't travel fast. They are not especially stealthy. They are robotic, so they don't have a lot of evasive capability. But if there are a lot of them, you're going to use interceptors to shoot them down. Sometimes you can use guns, but most of the time, much of the time, you're going to use interceptors. And interceptors are very expensive and only available in finite numbers. So the Israelis are running up against a country that can potentially launch thousands of drones. I don't know what the numbers ultimately are, but thousands are not a crazy number. I mean, in fact, uh, the Ukrainians and the Russians have been launching considerably tens of thousands of drones against each other. So, uh, and these drones are going to require interceptors. They have a warhead on them, so you can't ignore them. You can't say, "Oh, it's a drone. I don't care about it." It's a drone that has an explosive warhead on it. So if it's going to something you care about, you're going to have to try to interdict it. So we're in a process where the Iranians are working to exhaust the defense capacities of Israel with regard to missiles that can launch against drones, interceptors. In the case of the ballistic missiles, the biggest reason the ballistic missiles don't detonate on the ground is failures of the ballistic missiles when they get launched or when they re-enter the atmosphere. Um, the missile defenses are really close to meaningless. It's amazing to me. I've been collecting videos. I haven't had a chance to string them together, so I'm sorry I won't be able to show them to you here. But you see these people, so-called experts. I mean, and the videos show interceptors in the air not failing to engage ballistic missiles as they come in, failing to destroy them. And these people are saying, well, 90% intercept rate. Well, if you have a 90% intercept rate, it's going to be very evident. But what you do is you see dozens, sometimes many dozens, many scores of interceptors flying up, and you see one or two ballistic missiles coming in and just come right through and hit the ground and explode. So how can you have a 90% intercept rate if you have scores of interceptors in the air and the only ballistic missiles you see coming in are not detonated but reach the ground? So you need to have, I don't know, a cherry for a brain, or just simply not be looking at what's in front of you to understand that what you're saying is nonsense. And this is being widely reported. I'm sort of stunned at this. In the 1990s, my colleague George Lewis and I showed that the Patriot interceptors had essentially a zero intercept rate against Scuds. This was done in the Gulf War of 1991. We showed this. And we showed this by analyzing videos. We have papers we've written about this. We have videos we put out. These people have no memory. It's extraordinary. And during that time, we have all these videos showing people saying, "Yeah, there's an intercept," and the warhead reaches the ground and explodes. And so it's deja vu all over again. It's like there's no memory in this press, and there's no evidence of learning. It's a shocking display of just blatant incompetence, as far as I can tell. I mean, I've been asked to go on many podcasts on this, which you might call the alternative media, but the mainstream media has not contacted me or any colleagues at all. They just have some guy from the State Department who, as far as I can tell, knows less than nothing, thinks and he's there and he's talking about all the intercepts, and he's got no technical skills. He hasn't looked at the videos. He has no explanation, and it just goes on and on. It's really a sad situation that our democracy is so under threat by our press. I mean,
Hmm.
we do not have a functioning free press at this point. It doesn't matter whether it's it's suppressed by forces or it's not functioning. If it doesn't function, we don't have the information being fed to the population so the population can participate in the function of our democracy. So I consider current press, the functioning of the current press, one of the greatest threats to American democracy.
Sure.
It's just, it's overwhelming. It's really hard to believe.
Well,
But
George
go
Washington, right? Without freedom of speech, we will be led like lambs to the slaughter. It's
well,
if you don't have the information, there's no point in having a government you can participate in if you don't have the information to participate in the mechanism that affects the information you're receiving.
we have some level of freedom of speech, but it's ignorant speech. It's not
Yeah.
informed. It's nobody is trying to bang down the door of my home yet, at least
Yeah.
for what I'm saying. But nobody who is responsible for disseminating accurate information, at least in the mainstream press, has in any way made an attempt to inform themselves. They don't have to believe me. I mean, I can show them the evidence, and there's just no interest in evidence. So it is a tragic situation, and the Russians are not the great threat to our democracy. Or it's the American press is one of the great threats to our democracy,
Yeah,
and as well as the U.S. government, which is of course behaving in a very autocratic and dangerous way at this time.
it's pretty
So,
disillusioning when you see that. And especially for me, it is because I'm 34. I have no employees. This is just me and a computer in an apartment. And I've had on guests who will tell me I have not been contacted by, and not until in some cases with doctors or, people about Ukraine, years later, they get contacted. And it's like, this cannot be, I mean, I'm proud and I work hard on this, but like, these people should not be contacted by me in my apartment. Like, that's not a functioning press.
well, it is a functioning alternative media, and I think
Sure.
thank God we have it
No, absolutely,
because it
absolutely.
yeah, but the problem is the average person does not use, in fact, the average person is not even aware of the
Sure.
alternative media. I mean, I talk
And
to people all the time and they're saying, where do you get this information?
well, I would have seen it on the news if it were true.
Yeah, right, right. And of course, the news is just nonsense. So it is a problem. I hope it will eventually get addressed in some way or other. I can't predict how it will happen, but maybe, we haven't descended into a complete autocratic social system, but it's not a very good one, and we'll just have to hope social evolution will address this eventually. At least that's my hope, but I can't say for sure.
Sure.
But maybe I should move to a discussion of what is happening now and just give people a sense of what uh, what the I'm going to try to bring up.
You're good.
There we go. Uh, Let me talk first about the issue of accuracy of these long-range missiles. The the we know we are you doing that or me? Hello?
I'm not doing anything.
Oh, okay. So this thing is going on its own. Let me see what's happening here. I don't understand why it's doing things without me.
It might all be loading in.
Oh, hopefully. All right. So let's just take a look, get a general sense of. Let me find out what's going on here. No, I don't.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. I think I see what's doing it.
You got anything touching your keyboard?
No, it's dragging. I'm using I have uh, a voice control system on
Uh,
my computer, and like all this stuff that's artificial intelligence, it takes over.
yeah, that's fitting. Talking
It's
about nuclear
it,
missiles, Skynet's like,
yeah,
you shut up.
yeah. Okay, so there are two parameters that determine the destructive capability of any missile, but a ballistic missile in particular, and that's its accuracy and the range at which it can inflict damage. So, of course, a nuclear weapon can inflict damage over very large distances, typically distances of, a few miles at a minimum, a mile, mile and a half or two, even for a simple nuclear weapon. But a ballistic uh, warhead, a warhead from a conventional nuclear weapon, can only inflict damage, although quite a bit of damage, at ranges that are relatively short. So if we want to get a sense of what the range is, we have here a little chart. Um, I can make this available to your audience if they send me an email requesting it, but be very specific.
Which
If you
which email
if
would
you
you want them to
if
send
you
it to?
send an email, you can send it to postol@mit.edu, but make sure your heading says uh, Carrigan briefing. All right.
Okay.
Because if it doesn't, I'm not going to
The-
look at it because I'm just too busy and I'm trying like hell to keep up with things and get a lot of emails. But if you put that heading in there, I can do a search in my emails and I can identify those emails that are asking for the slides and I'll send them to you. I've been doing that in other situations, but if you don't put it on the heading, uh,
Oh,
don't bet on anything.
I do that with guests who I've had on the show multiple times. I make sure that I'm like, hey, by the way, you did my podcast. Like, I'll put that there.
Yeah, yeah. So if you want to understand what a 1 ton warhead from a ballistic missile might impart in the way of blast overpressure, the warhead on the missile is not like a conventional bomb. A conventional bomb is typically half of its weight or more can be the casing of the bomb, the metal casing. And that's not an accident. It's because the explosive in the bomb, which is typically about half of the weight of the bomb, depending on the bomb design, is there to fracture to fracture the casing into many small pieces and excel. It's like a shotgun.
Uh,
The idea, so and because the pieces can be lethal at much larger ranges than the actual blast overpressure. So
like
a
a
general
grenade.
purpose bomb is typically designed to be, think of it as a shotgun that's, spreading fragments in all directions.
Jeez.
And if you're close enough to get the blast, you're going to be shredded anyway by fragments. The explosive on a ballistic missile warhead is typically a thin shell in which explosives are poured. They just depend on the explosive power. So this upper line can you see I think you
Yep.
can see my cursor. Okay. This upper line here shows you the blast versus range, blast overpressure versus range for roughly a 1 ton warhead on a ballistic missile. And that's what the warhead weights are on these Iranian missiles. And if you want to do significant damage to a concrete and steel building, you need to land close enough that 40 pounds per square inch or more of the blast pressure is imparted to the building. That's kind of a, very rough rule of thumb. So here we look 20, 30, 40 pounds per square inch. We go across here and we go down here and we see, well, if this warhead lands between 30 and 40 feet, this 1 ton from a structure, it could potentially cave in the walls if it's a big if it's a house, a wood frame house, it'll cave in the walls at 5 pounds per square inch. So that'll be at a couple of 100 feet. Here's the couple of 100 feet from 5 pounds per square inch. But so it depends on the, not surprisingly, it depends on the structure that's under attack or that happens to be near the detonation. Uh, if you have a very low level of blast, 2 pounds per square inch, sounds low, but it will shatter glass. And if you're standing near that glass window, it will blow the glass through at high enough speed that it will severely injure you or quite possibly kill you. So flying fragments at 2 pounds per square inch of overpressure are a real threat. And at 2 pounds per square inch overpressure, you you can have lots of fragments, and you can have small things like, for example, if you're in a city, an urban area, the 2 pounds per square inch can blow things off your stove and cause local fires inside buildings and stuff, initiate fires. So it's not like a nuclear weapon where the nuclear weapon causes a flash of light where everything is on fire. So it's not like a nuclear weapon. Nuclear weapons are different. Everything is on fire. But but the blast pressure can cause uh, fires to be initiated by accidents. And in an urban area where people are living and they haven't taken special care to eliminate ignition points, you do get ignitions being caused. So if we look at, let's say, 1,000-pound bomb, I'm choosing um, the Washington, D.C. So here is the Library of Congress. And and this red circle here shows you the area of 2 pounds per square inch. So it just shows you the area where general damage will occur. But the knocking down wood frame buildings would also occur at a large range. But if you were talking about doing damage to the Library of Congress, for example, you'd have to be much closer to the Library of Congress. So, but if you want to get a sense of what the scenes look like, here's an example of general damage from a 1-ton warhead in Israel. And this warhead landed close enough to this building that it caused the general collapse of the interior. And if you were in this interior, you would quite likely have been severely injured or quite likely killed from flying pieces of debris. And if you were underneath sections that collapsed, you could quite likely have been crushed by the falling debris, not to mention killed by the actual blast overpressure. So the important point to keep in mind is that when one of these explosions occur, there's a lot of general damage that's caused. This may have caused a lot of damage to this building because it landed closer to this building, but you can be sure that the interiors of these buildings have all suffered extreme damage, and people could well have been severely injured or killed in them. Here's another example of the kind of damage that can be induced by these, simple 1-ton bomb. So this is nothing to ignore, to be quite blunt. It's you definitely would not want to. So the question is, uh, can you deliver these bombs with enough precision to use them against, for example, military targets versus civilian targets? Well, here is uh, the impact points as we best understand them that occurred at the Nevatim Air Base in Israel in October of 2024 during the last mass attack by Iran. In this particular case, they tried to confine their attack to military installations. And so this distribution of hit points was useful for me because from this hit distribution, I could make a very rough guess of what the accuracy of their missiles were, because these missiles would have all have been their more modern, more accurate missiles. They have a large number of less accurate missiles that they're also using, but these would be their most modern, most accurate missiles because they're trying to hit this airbase. So if we look at uh, it turns out there's a very simple way to estimate the accuracy. If you put a circle around, essentially all of the impact points, this is an outlier, so we won't worry about it. That circle will be uh, twice, if you encompass essentially all of the points, that'll be twice the value of what is called the CEP, the circular error probable of because if you're twice the CEP, most of the warheads will fall in the range of twice the CEP, and half of the warheads will fall within the CEP. The CEP is the circle within which half of the warheads fall. So by simply doing a little bit of arithmetic, we can deduce that the CEP in this particular case is about half this diameter, which would be about 1 kilometer. So we know what the rough accuracy of the most modern uh, uh, Iranian missiles are. What I haven't had a chance to do because next time I give this talk somewhere else, I'll have the data, I'll have the slides, is to show what downtown Tel Aviv, the dimensions of downtown Tel Aviv look like. It's very clear that the Iranians have been targeting the downtown Tel Aviv as well as other areas. We see this in some of the arriving ballistic missiles in the sky. We can see clusters of these missiles coming in, and they're clustered well together. They're probably, kilometers to fractions of a kilometer apart. But, the downtown area of Tel Aviv is pretty big. And there are big, tall buildings in them. And we have seen evidence of very severe damage to these buildings. And what the what the Israelis very unwisely did is they attacked civilians in Tehran because they were trying to kill these leaders, and the leaders were living in housing, downtown housing, and they killed a whole bunch of civilians. They thereby opened up the door to an Iranian retaliation that included civilian targets rather than being confined to military targets. The Israeli strategy opened the door to that kind of response. Now, it still doesn't make it doesn't make the Iranian response uh, acceptable in terms of international law. They're still violating international law by attacking civilians. The fact that one guy violates the law does not justify you violating the law, but you're on more of a well-grounded footing if you're saying, well, I have to respond in kind. And this was done because of the really very short-sighted attempt to kill these leaders. And it's not going to come out well for Israel because Israel's a smaller country than Iran. It's got fewer big cities. Iran has potentially thousands of ballistic missiles. At least that's what's being reported. I have no way of knowing. But a few hundred of these ballistic missiles have already done very significant damage, and they will continue to do damage if there continue to be attacks on the scale of hundreds of ballistic missiles. It's going to, hundreds of ballistic missiles are going to mean tens of those missiles are going to fall within urban centers in Israel because their accuracy is not so great. But tens of 1-ton warheads falling within the boundaries of a big city is not going to be something that you can easily ignore, especially if it's coming at you every few days. So, is it going to defeat Israel? No. I mean, big cities are very resilient. The idea that you can turn a city to rubble like we did during World War II requires incredible amounts of ordnance being dropped in patterns of that are very controlled in terms of the distribution of the munitions being dropped. But if you want to do severe damage to a society, disrupt it very seriously, uh, what Iran is now doing is good enough. Good enough.
Good
Keep
enough
in
for you.
mind that Israel's economy is in shambles because people are not working. All kinds of people are in the army fighting. Uh, there have been very strong reactions across a large part of the world with regard to um, moral outrage about Israel's conduct in its attacks on Lebanon and, of course, Gaza. And so the economy is under great stress from countries and individuals shying away from doing any kind of business with Israeli businesses. And frankly, we don't hear about it, but I expect that the Israeli economy is in a shambles. It won't surprise me if it collapses in some level. Or we will find out it has collapsed at some point. Uh, because it's being buoyed up right now, of course, by fantastic amounts of money coming in from the American government and also support from the Western European powers. So, so this is not a war where the long-term prospects for Israel look good. Will they be defeated in the conventional sense? No. Iran is not going to occupy Israel. They're not going to be able to, uh, but they're going to be able to do significant damage to Israel that Israel will not be able to easily recover from. So so I think that uh, the scale of Israel being 10 million people and the scale of Iran being 90 million people and physically a big country is going to make a difference over time. Now there's the question of the vulnerability of the Iranian nuclear program to bombing from Israel. The only way to damage the Iranian nuclear program is to be able to destroy the structures that are underground that Iran has built with considerable care. And I don't have details of how they went about building these underground structures, but I do know quite a bit about how you would go about building these kinds of structures if you knew what you were doing. And let me assure you that the Iranians know what they're doing. So this portrayal of the Iranians as somehow unsophisticated is just totally ridiculous. So let me. I'm just showing you the uh, one of the problems we Americans have. I say this as an observer of my own culture. Is we are very insular. We don't recognize the cleverness and capabilities and innovation of other cultures.
American exceptionalism at all costs.
Right, right.
Yeah, which is inaccurate.
And of course, we see this in the discussion we're seeing now in the country and in particular in the Congress about China. The Chinese have stolen everything from yeah, it's nonsense. China is an extraordinarily well-developed country in terms of its educational standards, the number of well-educated scientists and engineers, the technical capacities of the country. China has 3 times the manufacturing capability of the United States, 3 times the capacity. So when we manufacture a frigate, a naval vessel, we pay $1.5 billion, $1.6 billion for it. The Chinese, as far as I can tell, they can manufacture a frigate that's nearly up to the capability, if not at that capability, because they have technically very close to as sophisticated as we are, for $300 billion. So that's 4 or 5 to 1 in terms of the cost. Plus, they have the greater manufacturing capacity. So when you hear Lindsey Graham talking about, oh, we're going to have go to war with China because they're our enemy, this man is totally ignorant. He has no idea what he's talking about. If we go to war with China, we will lose. We are already in a war with Russia, proxy war, which was instigated by the Biden administration. That's a a whole different discussion. Some of your audience may be astonished by my comment, but I'll be, there are discussions they can find where they can get this information. But we're already in a proxy war using Ukraine as the bloody plunger, and uh, and we have lost it. What we are going to see in the next few months, if not weeks, is the Russian army sweeping across Ukraine. The Ukrainian army is in the process of collapsing, and Putin has not yet uh, responded to the extraordinarily ill-considered attack which the United States and the UK were involved in on Russian strategic forces. That's a whole other discussion. But we are going to see the Russian response has not yet occurred. The escalation in the Russian attacks that are now going on, that are causing the collapse of the Ukrainian army, are not yet the full response of Russia. We're going to see some exceptional things happening in the next few weeks because of the Russian determination to respond. And Putin has made it clear in what I guess might be called a frank discussion with Trump, and Trump did not push back, that he doesn't find this American and Ukrainian attack on the Russian strategic forces acceptable, and he will respond. And Putin is not, he doesn't make threats he won't carry out. The two big two big mistakes that the United States has made in the last 4 or 5 years is the mistake that uh, General Montgomery once alluded to when he said the biggest military mistake you could make is don't march on Moscow. Actually, that's the biggest military mistake you could ever make. And the other biggest military mistake, which is a variant of that statement, is don't try to bluff the Chinese.
Mm,
And we've made both big
we've
mistakes.
made both.
Anyway, here is an article by uh, 5 Chinese authors, and they're from an Institute of Defense Engineering and other related institutes. These are serious institutions. They are not stealing American technology. And the article is about how to build what's called composite concrete so that an earth penetrating or concrete penetrating warhead will not be effective against your underground structure. you know, it's not an accident that the Chinese are studying this. They're and it's not, and incidentally, it's not unique to the Chinese. That is to say, this is not stuff that the Iranians don't know about
Hmm.
and are almost certainly incorporated into their underground structures. So, if we look at what they're talking about a structure that they call a diamond structure. This is a little bit confusing, but what you do with a diamond structure is you have concrete structures. You don't have uniform concrete protecting your structure. You have concrete that's got waves in it, little surfaces that are at, in this case, 120-degree angles, and um, and you have regions of concrete that are more dense than other regions of concrete. And you can control the density by just putting larger or smaller particles when you fabricate the concrete. So what happens is when when the long, you want this penetrating warhead to be long and slender
Hmm.
because you want to bring the maximum force to bear on the
On the tiny
smallest
little,
area
yeah.
possible to penetrate through. So when this warhead hits this structure, and remember it's long and thin, what happens is all of a sudden the front of this warhead gets slowed up. It gets sort of pushed in a direction just because of the slanted surface, and it will tend to whip around,
Mm.
developing a high angle relative to its initial direction. So what you get are very large deflections in the munition. So when the United States claims falsely that we have something called the mother of all bombs, the MOB, and that it has a 60-meter, 200-foot penetration distance, they're not telling you the truth. Because if this bomb is dropped on a structure that's been properly designed with inhomogeneous concrete, uh, this weapon is going to go curving around. In fact, uh, in some tests, I've actually been fortunate enough to talk to some people who are actually involved in testing these earth penetrating warheads. In some of these tests, one guy who was testing them described an earth penetrating test where the warhead came into the ground and then it popped up. It was diverted through several inhomogeneous
Oh
encounters
God.
with the ground and it just popped up out of the ground.
Oh God.
So, so these warheads can be made. It can be made very difficult for these warheads to penetrate very deep if you have an adversary who knows what they're doing.
Well, that's kind of the more advanced tank armors throughout World War II, right?
Right. The tank armor is
Then
spaced and it's
the
inhomogeneous, and
and then the
this
paint
idea
to
is
put on
not
ships.
unique.
The I think, sorry for interrupt, the dazzle ships, I think, or razzle ships in World
Yeah.
War. It was to change the perspective so you didn't, because you want to hit 90 degrees on. The entire idea was give them a bad
Right. You see all these things with slanted surface. So here's an example of a physical test that the Chinese actually use. They have photographs of their test structure. So this is a diamond structure uh, material test. So it's got a cross section that's diamond shaped, and it's just placed in this diamond shaped cavity because they want to see what the effect of a munition hitting this plate would be. So they actually take a munition and they fire the munition at this plate, and this is what you get. You see, this munition was literally turned sideways and went up against the wall. It was just stopped in its tracks. So if you want to know, uh, and they and you know, and they just say, okay, we're scientists. We're going to show you what types of target plates um, can actually, what the depth might actually be. So uh, the depth of the projectile in this case, without specialized material, this is in this particular case is uh, is 800 millimeters, so it's almost a meter. And in these other cases, it's half that. And of course, if you had multiplicity of these structures, these diamond-shaped structures, in it would be if you had a structure, let's say under uh, 80 meters, for example, the Natanz facility. I don't know what the truth is, but uh, 80 meters of protection is what people are reporting. I just don't know if that's correct. But if it's 80 meters of protection, you're not getting to these underground structures. And in the case of Foro, another installation where it is believed that the nuclear weapons work could be done or has been done and is a reserve capacity, that's under mountainous structures. They're tunnels dug into the underground structure, and basically you have to penetrate into the structure and hit it. And if you don't penetrate into the structure or immediately above it, you're not going to collapse the tunnel. So you have to know where the tunnels are. Nobody has that information. So um, all of a sudden, it's being reported by even the press, which hasn't been able to figure out that the Iranian ballistic missiles have not been are not being intercepted, even though they can look in the sky and see that. All of a sudden, the press is all of a sudden beginning to say, well, there's looks like the nuclear program has not been severely impacted. Well, wake up. Of course, it's not going to be severely impacted because it's underground. And you're dealing with a competent adversary, a very competent adversary who's getting more competent all the time, who's getting help from the Chinese, from the Russians. Incidentally, the help that Iran is getting from the Chinese and the Russians is basically due to the bullying of the United States. If you look at the overall strategic behavior of the United States, it's been aimed at being very aggressive toward all these countries. So what have we done? We have strategically pushed Russia to become an ally of China. All these, all these sanctions, the geniuses who came up with this in the Biden administration, who came up with all these uh, uh, economic sanctions, have actually done tremendous damage to Europe's economy. The European economy, the gross domestic product in Europe is roughly zero now, possibly heading toward a negative gross domestic product. Europe is in deep economic strife. The Russian economy is growing at 4.5% per year, doing well. The Chinese economy is growing between 3 and 5% per year. They're doing well. We're now threatening if Lindsey Graham were to get his way, we would uh, put 500% tariffs on China if they continue buying oil and gas from Russia. How can we stop them? The Chinese and the Russians have agreed to build pipelines from Russia directly to China. I mean, this man is in, what we've done is we have catalyzed the entire non-Western world into allying themselves with each other because of the aggressive militaristic and economic attacks from the West against them. And this is why we have seen the astonishing rise and expansion of BRICS. If any of those in your
Mhm.
audience who don't know what BRICS is, you should go look it up because BRICS is now a major economic force in the world, and it's getting stronger by the day, and it will continue to get stronger. All of this is a result of stimulation by the behavior of the Biden administration. It was going on before that, but the aggressive posture of the United States, and now followed by the Trump administration and these incredibly ill-informed members of our own Senate. It's hard to believe that people can be elected in office and remain so ignorant. They have no commitment to understanding the world, and they're trying to reshape the American foreign policy to be even dumber than it already is. And that's what's now going on. So,
It's what all these countries are doing is really just a rational immune response to an exogenous threat. I mean, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? By pushing up from large things like the reserve currency to smaller things like the diamond shape armor
yeah.
for structural barriers for underground targets. It all comes from if you come for the king, you best not miss. Every time you don't kill something, it's simply going to get stronger. It's just what it is. And we've been doing,
Well, I mean,
we've been,
if it can survive and adjust.
well, that's what I mean is
So,
so yeah, it's not 1950. We don't have like a 10-to-1 military advantage on a destroyed world. It is not 1950. I mean, it's, and we're acting like it is.
yeah, yeah. So I'm afraid that we're now in a situation where uh, things are getting worse dramatically. Uh, I think the situation for Israel will go downhill. The United States is already talking about providing Israel with direct military support. I am very suspicious that we have done that anyway, because I don't quite understand. I haven't analyzed this, so let me be clear. So I don't want, I don't quite understand how Israel was able to do all the air refueling required for its combat jets unless it had some kind of external help. I
Yeah,
may be wrong about that, but uh, you know, I don't think they have the air refueling capacity. You'd have to probably have to get someone who studied this. I haven't studied this, but my guess is it's not available.
I look at it from a more in my 34-year-old wisdom, not that I know what the hell I'm talking about. I look at it more as just a general, regardless, air refueling, whatever, just in general, gun to your head, take a lie detector test. Do you really think the Israeli military is going to carry out a massive operation without the knowledge and help of the United States? Just regardless of what year it is.
Yeah,
I
right,
mean,
right.
come on. It's just in the same way I would be like, yeah, I guarantee China's somehow helping Iran. I don't know how, but it just, come on. I mean, come on.
Well, the problem is that you have a world that is becoming increasingly industrialized, increasingly well educated, increasingly technologically sophisticated and advanced. We are not, we, the West, are not unique in the world anymore. And the process will and is accelerating because once you get the toehold you need to start building your own internal capabilities. That's what happened with China. There was no question that China uh, built on American expertise and financial support because people were working for pathetic wages. They were using uh, those pathetic wages to get uh, uh, you know, foreign monetary capabilities that would then allow them to buy industrial capacity. And then they learned from that industrial capacity, and then they started innovating on their own. This is what happened to Japan. Somehow the Chinese stole from us. Well, the Japanese stole from us too then. We were the last guy standing, just as the Europeans benefited from us. And and there are intelligent and creative people everywhere in the world. And once you give them enough capacity to help themselves and start building on their own internal creativity and capacity, they're unstoppable unless you want to destroy them with nuclear weapons or something. They will be unstoppable. And that's why China's unstoppable. That's why Iran is unstoppable. That's why Russia is now unstoppable. And they are not going to let the United States bully them. And the United States has sealed its own fate to a large degree by its conduct, its international behavior. And we're not going to be living in tents. The United States is not going to become impoverished, but it's already not able to bully the world. We cannot bully the world anymore. And if we try to do it again, I mean, I speak as loudly as I can on this question. We do not want to get into a war with China. We will lose, and we will lose many American lives because it will have to be a war of navies, and they will sink capital ships of the United States with thousands of our people on board. We do not want to have this kind of war. And if Lindsey Graham wants to have that kind of war, give him a rowboat and let him go out
Give
and
him a
fight it.
gun, go get him.
But I don't want our people dying for nothing in a losing war, in a war we can't win. This is not what's good for the United States, and we will be much better off just stopping these kinds of aggressive postures and trying to instigate situations where the possibility of an accidental war becomes more and more likely. It's just not a good strategy. So,
No, and it's, in general, people's just because I've done so many episodes, people's reflexive response to things like this is it's lowbrow, it's stupid, and it's immediately that somehow you or myself don't love America, and yet we're not on America's side, and it couldn't be further from the truth. A
if you love
rational,
America,
it's a
you'll do
rational,
what you can to
sober,
protect her.
correct. It's a rational, sober examination of the geopolitical chessboard and
Yeah.
going, hey, it's this is going to result in it's an existential thing. I don't want to see this place destroyed. I don't want to see a place
Yeah.
I grew up and hopefully one day have my own like I don't want to see this. It's not the same as like America's interests abroad. That's a vague thing, and every country has their interests abroad with trade and embassies. I get that. It's a whole. This is not the same as America having a base in Okinawa or Ramstein. This
Yeah.
is you're trying to bulldoze the world with thermonuclear weapon or the threat of it, and we're all going to suffer from it. This is not the two ocean separation. That doesn't apply when it goes hot and everyone just says, F it and starts sending nuclear missiles. Like I don't want to see this happen. Like, and to think it is, hey man, if 19, I'm not even saying it's objectively right or wrong. If it's
Yeah.
1950, it's a couple years after the war, the whole thing's in
Well,
disarray, and you're going, hey, we're sitting pretty. Yeah, I'm not really surprised that we set up the world order to benefit us. Who wouldn't? But
yeah.
it's not 1950. It's been three
Well,
quarters of a
you
century.
know, just like General Montgomery said, Sun Tzu said the same thing 2,500 years ago in The Art of War, where he basically said, and I'll quote him in a simple-minded way, don't start a fight with someone who can defeat you. You know,
It's. I
it's
heard
so common sense that it's hard to believe,
I
you
heard a
know?
comedian say it well. Ray Kump. He said, in 1950, it was like a poker or yeah, like a poker game. In 1950, America had like 10 times the chips of everyone else combined, meaning we could have bluffed against the entire world going all in two times before we were in any threat. Right now, he's like, we still have more chips, but it's like we have 1.5 or two times as many chips. One bad hand,
We're gone.
it's flipped. It's not the same as being 10 to 1.
Right.
We're just not there. So it's yeah, man, I don't want to see that happen. And it's with
So I
not
think the Israelis have made the same mistake here.
yeah,
They chose somebody who's too big for them to swallow, and and their, of course, one of their objectives they may have achieved, which is to get the United States pulled
involved,
into their
which
circle,
seems to be their objective.
and it's a real failure of the current administration if they allow that to occur, which it looks like they're doing.
Yeah.
So, the best thing to do, which I understand is unrealistic given the current political environment, is to just tell Israel, you started it, you're on your own. We're not part of this.
Yeah.
You take care of it. You started it. You began it. You're on your own.
Yeah.
It's just simple.
Yeah.
And but unfortunately, the Jewish lobby in the United States has captured the political system,
Hmm.
and this uh, American Israel Public Action Committee, this IPAC,
It's a
uh,
tumor.
they are not committed to the security of the United States.
And why would they be?
And well, they should be. They're Americans.
No, but the
I
Israeli
mean,
aspect, like,
and they want to call me anti-Semitic. Fine.
I don't, you can, dude, I'd be,
As it turns out, I'm Jewish, but but they want to, this business of calling people anti-Semitic who just speak the truth on these matters is just outrageous.
it,
And
it,
you
it,
know, it's it's a kind of neo-McCarthyism, and it's not acceptable. You know,
you,
the Jewish community is not unified in this issue. I say this gladly, proudly, that a lot of people, a lot of Jews are just upset as hell about this IPAC and their allies. And I am among them. They
my,
they are not worried about the security of the United States. They don't care about the United States. And I'm saying this because they want to have a fight in public about this. Fine, let's do it. Let's talk about what the real interest of the United States is. And it's not what IPAC is arguing for.
I was going to say my Jewish friends are more anti-Semitic than anyone I know. And like,
Well, it's not
I,
anti-Semitism.
I,
It,
I
it
know,
has to
but
do with having an independent view and being interested in doing what's best for your country. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Catholic, an Islamic person, Protestant, whatever, Hindu, whatever. I have friends from all kinds of backgrounds because of the accident of my career, and none of them are anything but loyal to this country.
sure.
And and they're loyal enough to criticize the country because they don't want to see this country go under, as do I not want to see this country go under. And standing silent and be intimidated by a group of crackpots who want to say that our loyalty and our security should be subordinated to a little punk country that's trying to have a war with a giant country that's totally unneeded. It's a total war of choice. That is not in the security interest of the United States. And I'm happy to say it in public. Let them come after me.
Absolutely. You know, it's
I'm here.
and when you said, their interest is not in the US's interest, and when I said why would it be? No, the American interest
Yes.
should be. No, but why
Yes.
would it be in the same way that that just goes in general? It's like, it's like a pyramid scheme, and someone's like, I have an opportunity for you to make money. It's like, why would you care about me, a stranger, making money? And it's not even a bad thing. Of course you don't. In the same way, Israel didn't send an aircraft carrier to help us during Hurricane Katrina. And why would I'm not even saying they should. Why would they? Why would we? It's yeah, America really doesn't actually care about Germany. We just want our air bases there. Of course. Why would we care? It's not a bad thing. It's just look at it. That also means flip the tables. And if somebody is involved here, I go, yeah, they shouldn't care about the United States, and they don't care about the United States. You said it correctly. It's a little punk. It's your friend that's gotten into one too many drunk fights, and you're
Right.
finally like, hey, man, you're my little brother. I love you. You need to get your ass kicked. Like
Yeah,
you,
I'm not against Israel's existence at all.
oh,
I
I
have
don't
friends there.
care. Yeah, I don't
I
care.
tell my friends, you are always welcome in our home. I go out of my way to say it to them when I communicate with them because I know how stressed they are at this time.
Sure.
But this is unacceptable. This situation, absolutely unacceptable.
And
Anyway,
no, I was going to say, and you and I's discussion is exactly why my podcast will be continued to relegated to not the mainstream. We
well,
criticized Israel
so
and
be it.
said, I know, I don't care. We
Yeah,
criticized Israel and we said that China's not a bitch, which is even though I agree with both of them, it's a big note out of the corporate press. But you know what, man? Whatever. I'd rather discuss what's actually going on and have a sober look at reality than to bump around in the night with an anesthetized view. So,
yeah.
um, but we can wrap it up if you want. I know, sorry.
Well, I think we can wrap it up here
I've-
if it's okay with you.
yeah,
So
yeah, no, I'm deaf for that.
we've
Um,
said enough.
we've said enough to ensure our hatred, which is good. I
As I
don't
like to
care.
say, something to offend everybody.
Exactly. Exactly. Everyone's frothing, which means we did it. Um,
Yes, well, that's
but yeah, man, thank you for doing this on short notice for everybody listening. I think I emailed you last night or this morning and called you.
yes.
You did it very quickly. I'm
Well,
incredibly
I still
grateful
have
for your
things to
time.
put together. I'll try to in the next discussion have a little more
Absolutely.
to
And
say.
it'll be this one will actually be up in like an hour or two as opposed to waiting a day because I think it's important. So I will email it to you when it is up. And also you don't have to wait for me to reach out to you, man. You ever want to do my show, just give me a call. You're more than welcome to just hop on.
Okay,
You don't gotta
fine.
wait for an invitation. I like you. Just tell me you're
Okay,
fine. All right.
sounds good.
All right, brother. Thank you so much for
Take
your
care.
time. And
Have a good
guys,
day.
you too, sir. Thank you. Guys, thank you for watching. Take care, everybody.